What's up, everybody? This is Christoforou with the Duran, and I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. And today we're going to be talking about breaking news. Tommy Robinson has been freed from prison. So, Alexander, get into the details of this ruling by the judge in the UK. From what I understand, Tommy Robinson is being freed from prison because there were flaws in the process. But I also understand that the judge is calling for a retrial. Give us the details as to what's going on in this ruling.
Right. I think the first thing to say is that this is a judgment of the Court of Appeal of England. This is a very high court in England. And the judge who made the ruling, you said the judge, actually there were three judges, right. And the senior judge was the Lord Chief Justice, who is the most senior judge of the High Court bench. So this is a very powerful ruling by a very powerful bench of a very powerful court, the court that always decides criminal appeal cases. And actually, if you want to discuss the judgment that went out, I would advise our viewers to glance at some of the earlier videos that you and I did about Tommy Robinson, because you will see that many of the same points are made there. Essentially, what the Court of Appeal has said is this: Tommy Robinson was sent to prison, convicted of contempt of court, despite the fact that there was no clarity about what exactly was the nature of the contempt he committed. The process was rushed. There was no opportunity for him to advise lawyers properly. His lawyer was not instructed properly. And there were all sorts of other procedural flaws which give rise to a strong suspicion that even if he is guilty of contempt in the Leeds case, which is the one that we're talking about, the one he was convicted for, probably, this is my construction, the sentence that he got was wildly excessive.
So does this mean for until that retrial takes place, is Tommy Robinson free to leave? He's a normal citizen now until they have a retrial?
He is a free man, and in relation to contempt of court, in relation to the Leeds case, which is the one that caused all the attention, he must now be deemed innocent until the court has looked at it again and decided whether or not he is guilty. There are some suggestions that some of his actions, whilst he was filming a video, if I can remind people, our viewers, what he was sent to prison for was filming outside a courtroom in Leeds where certain people were being prosecuted for very serious sex offences. There are some suggestions that he might have committed some contempt of court during that filming, but the judges were not satisfied that this was necessarily so, and the case now has to be retried.
And so when the judges mean that the process was flawed, can you tell our viewers exactly what that really means by the process being flawed in a UK courtroom?
Right. Those who read the various things that I've been writing on the Duran, and those who have been watching our programs, will know that I constantly come up with this comment, this expression, due process. Due process is what is supposed to happen in order to ensure that there is a fair trial. Tommy Robinson didn't get a fair trial. Right. That's what the judges said, because so many things went wrong during the process which resulted in him being convicted of contempt of court, that the trial wasn't fair. It wasn't fair because it was rushed. It wasn't fair because the same judge who thought there might be a contempt of court tried it instead of referring it to another judge or bringing in the Attorney General. It wasn't fair because there was insufficient time for Tommy Robinson's lawyer to get proper instructions and to review the case properly. And it wasn't fair because it wasn't decided clearly what the contempt of court even was. So it was an unfair trial, and that is what is meant when people talk about flawed proceedings.
Okay, so give us a sense of the timeline now before that retrial happens, and how long usually does a retrial like this take? Is it a matter of days? Could it drag on for months? What's the timeline that we're looking at?
I think we are definitely looking at months rather than days, possibly weeks, but I think it's much more likely to be months. The Court of Appeal made it very clear that they want the Attorney General, that is the highest law officer in England, to review this case, decide whether a case should be brought. They seem to think that on balance perhaps one should be, and then bring a proper prosecution before a different judge in a different court, not necessarily in Leeds, more probably in London. So we're looking at several months before this matter is tried again. In that time, Tommy Robinson is free, and even if he is found in contempt of court on this retrial, it is not necessarily the case that he's going to be sent to prison, because he has already been in prison for 4 months. And it is possible that when the court retries it, they may decide that was more than a sufficient sentence, which he has served already.
So would you consider this a win for Tommy Robinson, a win for the UK justice system?
Right. First of all, I think one has to say that it is a win for the UK justice system. I mean, I said before, and we discussed this in our previous programs, that this was a serious mistake. It's always better to admit a mistake and do it right than to just go on making the same mistake. And I mean, this was generating so many protests and was causing so much trouble because, let's face it, people could sense that there was something wrong here, and they were right. And I really want to come back to that, actually, because, of course, you had all these very sarcastic comments appearing in the mainstream media, sort of saying that anybody who thinks that Tommy Robinson should be free is a racist or a xenophobe or a fascist or whatever. The simple fact is the man didn't get a fair trial. Those who've been saying he didn't get a fair trial were right. Those who insisted that all those protests were wrong. And I think that needs to be said, and it needs to be said clearly. But coming back to Tommy Robinson himself, is it a success for him? Of course it is. It is a success for him legally because he is now a free man and he has established what he and his supporters always said, which is that the trial was unfair. So all those who were protesting saying free Tommy Robinson have managed to get him free because, let's be clear, without those protests, there wouldn't have been an appeal in the way that there was. And, of course, politically, he's also come out stronger because he can now point out that the authorities have, in fact, sent him to prison following an unfair trial. He's fully entitled to say that now because it is true. So it is a win for the justice system, a belated win, a late win, but a win nonetheless. And it is a win for Tommy Robinson. Those who have lost, in my opinion, and lost badly, are the media, which didn't really want this outcome.
So why if this was so glaringly obvious that there was a lot of flaws in the entire process and that Tommy Robinson wasn't given his due process and wasn't given a fair shake, why did the authorities, why did the legal system in Leeds, why did the judges, why did the lawyers, the prosecution, why did they go down this path? It was so obvious that it was going to come to this verdict that we see today.
Well, I think that actually asks a lot of good questions. And I'm going to say frankly that I think it's partly because of the political atmosphere in Britain. This is something that we talked about in our previous programs also, which is clearly that there is a lot of hostility to Tommy Robinson. There's a lot of hostility in the media. There's a lot of hostility in the political system. Let's face it, there is also hostility to him within the judicial system also. And I think what happened in this case is maybe Tommy Robinson did step beyond the right point in filming in the way he did. But the judge clearly didn't like him and went off the deep end, sentencing him to 13 months without giving the man a fair trial. And that was wrong. And I mean, frankly, I can't help but feel, as I said, that it's the atmosphere, the hostility to right-wing people, to people who are anti-immigrant, which colored this whole affair.
Right, right. Well, it seems that Tommy Robinson has been vindicated today. And it also seems like you said earlier, the UK justice system did work.
Well, it eventually got there.
Got there.
I mean, he's still been in prison for 4 months. We'll see whether that stands. But at least, as I said, they admitted a mistake and they corrected it, and they should be given credit for it. As I said, those who should not be given credit for it are those in the media who basically went along with it.
Right. Alexander Mercouris, thank you very much for this breaking news analysis of Tommy Robinson being freed from prison and awaiting a retrial at this very moment. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below. Also, click on that notifications bell to get notifications every time we push out a new video. And remember to visit the Duran shop. Help support the Duran. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran, thank you very much. Until next time, take care.